The Academy's training facility buzzed with the familiar sound of hydraulics and heavy machinery. Recruits from 12 different star systems had gathered here, all vying for a spot in the elite defense corps. Among them stood Zara Chen, 5 feet 4 inches of what everyone assumed was pure mediocrity. "Look at tiny Zara," sneered Marcus Vale, a towering recruit from the mining colonies of Kepler 442b. His voice carried across the warm-up area like a foghorn. Did they lower the height requirements while I wasn't looking? The other recruits chuckled. Tessa Rinaldi, whose cybernetic enhancements gleamed under the harsh training lights, shook her head in mock pity. "Honestly, I don't know why Command bothers with charity cases. This isn't a daycare center." Zara said nothing. She never did. Instead, she continued her stretching routine with mechanical precision, each movement calculated and controlled. Her dark eyes held secrets that none of these future soldiers could fathom, secrets that would soon turn their world upside down. Drill Sergeant Kowalski stomped into the training bay, his boots creating thunderous echoes. The man was built like a battle cruiser and had the personality to match. "Listen up, maggots. Today we're testing your physical capabilities. You'll be lifting, carrying, and pushing equipment that weighs more than some of your home planet's gravity simulators." He gestured toward a series of massive metal objects arranged throughout the facility. "These training weights start at 500 pounds and go up to 2,000. The door simulator over there." He pointed to a massive circular hatch that looked like it belonged on a space station. "That beauty weighs in at 3,000 pounds. Take 6 people minimum to budget, and that's on a good day." Marcus cracked his knuckles. Finally, something worth my time. His genetically enhanced muscles rippled under his training uniform. The guy had been engineered for strength since birth, like most colonists from the heavy gravity worlds. Tessa flexed her cybernetic arms, the servos whirring softly. "Should be easy enough. My modifications can handle twice that weight." Other recruits murmured their agreement, sizing up the equipment with confident grins. They came from warrior cultures, military families, and enhanced genetic lines. This was their element. Zara walked quietly to the smallest weight, a mere 500-pound block of compressed metal. The other recruits gathered around, expecting entertainment. "Oh, this should be good," whispered Jake Morrison, a pilot candidate from Earth's orbital stations. "How much do you think she can actually lift? 200 pounds? Maybe 3 if she really tries." "I'm betting she can't even get off the ground," Tessa said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Poor little thing probably never lifted anything heavier than a datapad." Marcus crossed his arms, grinning wickedly. "Hey, Zara, need some help? I could probably lift that with my pinky finger." The crowd erupted in laughter. Even Sergeant Kowalski seemed amused, though he tried to hide it behind his stern expression. Zara positioned herself at the weight. Her hands, small and seemingly delicate, gripped the handles. She took a deep breath, centering herself in ways these recruits couldn't understand. "Any day now, Princess," Marcus called out. "We don't have all cycle." That's when Zara lifted the 500-pound weight, like it was made of foam, not just lifted it, but raised it overhead in a perfect military press, holding it there for a full 10 seconds before setting it down with barely a sound. The laughter died instantly. "Beginner's luck," Tessa muttered, but her voice lacked conviction. "The weight sensors must be malfunctioning." Sergeant Kowalski frowned, checking his data pad. "Sensors are fine. Weight registered at exactly 500 pounds. Zara moved to the 1,000-pound weight. This time, the training bay fell completely silent. Every eye was fixed on a small figure who had just made their assumptions look foolish. She gripped the handles. Lifted, the massive weight rose from the floor, as if gravity had suddenly become optional. Zara held at shoulder height, turned to face her audience, and then, in a move that defied every law of physics they thought they knew, she began to curl the weight, using it for bicep exercises. "What the hell?" Jake breathed. Marcus's jaw had unhinged completely. "That's impossible. She's not enhanced. I ran genetic scans on everyone during intake. She's baseline human." "Baseline humans don't lift 1,000 pounds like it's a lunch tray," Tessa whispered, her cybernetic eyes running diagnostic scans on Zara. My sensors aren't picking up any enhancement signatures. No muscle amplifiers, no gravity nullifiers, no hidden exoskeletons. Zara, finish your curls and set the weight down. Then she did something that sent chills down every spine in the facility. She smiled. Not a friendly smile, not a proud smile, but something predatory and knowing. Interesting, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the now silent bay. I was under the impression this was supposed to be challenging. She walked toward the 2,000-pound weight, the heaviest individual lifting apparatus in the facility. Stop, Sergeant Kowalski commanded. That weight requires safety protocols. Spotters, backup systems, medical teams on standby. Zara looked at him with those dark, mysterious eyes. Will it make you feel better if they stand around and watch me lift it? The sergeant's military training ward with his common sense. Protocol demanded he halt this madness, but curiosity and professional duty kept him silent. He activated his emergency beacon, calling for medical support, then nodded grimly. Proceed, but slowly. What happened next will be talked about in academy circles for decades to come. Zara didn't just lift the 2,000-pound weight. She cleaned and jerked it, performed overhead squats, and finished with a set of walking lunges across the training floor. The medical team arrived just in time to watch her set the weight down with the casual grace of someone putting away groceries. How? Marcus's voice cracked. His entire worldview was crumbling. I've been enhanced since birth. My muscles are carbon fiber composites. My bones are titanium ceramic hybrids. I shouldn't be weaker than a baseline human. Zara wiped her hands on a towel, completely unaffected by the workout that should have hospitalized her. You know, Marcus, that's a really good question. Want to hear something funny? I used to ask the same thing. She turned to address the entire group, her voice taking on a conversational tone that somehow made her next words even more terrifying. See, I grew up on a little colony world called New Geneva. Nothing special about it, really. Standard gravity, breathable atmosphere, decent soil composition. The kind of place where baseline humans were supposed to thrive. She paused, letting her words sink in. Except we had neighbors. The training bay was so quiet you could hear the air recyclers humming. These neighbors have been enhanced for centuries. Faster, stronger, smarter than any baseline human had a right to be. They looked at us the same way you all looked at me 10 minutes ago. Like we were weak, pathetic, unworthy of sharing the same space. Zara's smile grew wider, and several recruits took involuntary steps backward. They decided to prove their point through a little demonstration. Invaded our world, enslaved our people, used us for entertainment in their gladiator pits. They thought it would be amusing to watch the weak little humans try to fight for their lives. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Turns out they were right about one thing. It was amusing, just not in the way they expected. She walked toward the door simulator, the 3,000-pound monster that supposedly required 6 people to operate. Behind her, 37 of the galaxy's most promising military recruits followed like children chasing a nightmare. You see, there's something about baseline humans that enhanced people never quite understand. We adapt, we survive. And when you push us far enough, when you take everything we love and grind it into dust for your entertainment. Zara placed her hands on the massive door handles. We become something else entirely. The door began to move. Wait, Sergeant Kowalski called out, his voice tight with concern. That mechanism hasn't been properly calibrated. The resistance could be set too high. You could injure yourself. Zara laughed, a sound like breaking glass and distant thunder. Injure myself? Oh, Sergeant, you still don't understand. I'm not trying to lift this door. The massive circular hatch was moving now, rising steadily under her grip. 3,000 pounds of military-grade materials rising like a morning sun. I'm testing whether it can handle my full strength without breaking. The door completed its rotation and locked into the open position with a solid clang. Zara hadn't even broken a sweat. She turned back to her audience, and for the first time, they could see something burning in those dark eyes. something that spoke of worlds reduced to ash and vengeance measured in lifetimes. My name is Zara Chen. I am the sole survivor of New Geneva. I spent 3 years in those gladiator pits, learning what enhanced humans could dish out. I spent 7 more years hunting down every single one of my captors across 42 star systems. Some of them begged at the end. Some of them tried to run. None of them succeeded. She walked close to the group, and they parted before her like water. I came to this academy not because I need training, but because the galaxy has bigger problems than enhanced slavers. There are things out there in the dark between stars that make your worst nightmares look like bedtime stories. And when they look at humanity and see nothing but weakness, well, Zara stopped directly in front of Marcus, the genetically enhanced giant who now looked like a frightened child. They're going to learn the same lesson your neighbors did. That baseline human isn't a limitation. She reached out and placed one small hand on Marcus's chest. He tried not to flinch. It's a warning label. The silence stretched for eternal seconds before Sergeant Kowalski found his voice. Chun, report to my office immediately. The rest of you maggots, continue with standard protocol testing. Morrison, you're in charge until I return. As Zara followed the sergeant out of the training bay, the remaining recruits stood in stunned clusters, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Did she just threaten us? Tessa whispered, her cybernetic processors running probability calculations that kept coming up with impossible results. Marcus was staring at his hands, flexing fingers that could crush steel but felt inadequate next to what he'd just seen. She didn't threaten us. She was explaining the natural order, and apparently, we're not at the top of it. Jake ran nervous fingers through his hair. 42 star systems? She hunted people across 42 star systems? How is that even possible for one person? It's not, said Elena Vasquez, a tactical specialist from the Mars Academies who had remained quiet during the earlier mockery. Unless you're not really a person anymore. Unless you're something else wearing a person's face. In Sergeant Kowalski's office, Zara sat calmly in a chair that seemed too big for a frame. The sergeant paced behind his desk, occasionally glancing at data readouts that made no sense. Your intake files say you're from New Geneva, he began. Colony established 47 years ago. Population roughly 2 million. Status, active and thriving. Zara's expression didn't change. Your files are wrong. My files are updated monthly by Colonial Command. I have trade reports from New Geneva dated 6 weeks ago. Then Colonial Command is lying to you. Her voice carried no emotion, just cold certainty. Or something is pretending to be New Geneva. Either way, the real colony died 12 years ago. Kowalski stopped pacing. That's a serious accusation, recruit. If you're claiming Colonial Command has falsified records, I'm not claiming anything. I'm stating facts. New Geneva was destroyed. Its population was enslaved. The enhanced collective of Rigel. 7 used our world as a training ground for gladiator combat. When they were finished with us, they glassed the surface from orbit. She stood up, moving to the window that looked out over the academy grounds. I was 15 when it happened. Small for my age, just like now. They thought I'd make good entertainment, because I looked so helpless. The Enhanced Collective was disbanded 7 years ago after the Treaty of Proxima. Kowalski said carefully. Their leaders were tried for war crimes and executed. Zara turned back to him, and her smile was sharp enough to cut starlight. Yes, they were. I made sure of that personally. The sergeant sat down heavily. You're claiming you single-handedly hunted down and killed the leadership of one of the most powerful military organizations in known space. Not claiming, stating. That's impossible. The collective had fleets, armies, enhanced super soldiers, one baseline human, even with military training. Could never defeat them in a fair fight. Zara agreed. Good thing I wasn't interested in fighting fair. She returned to her chair, settling in with predatory grace. Let me tell you something about enhanced humans, Sergeant. They're stronger than us, faster than us, smarter than us in most ways. But they have one critical weakness, which is they think like enhanced humans. They assume everyone else will fight by the same rules, use the same strategies, value the same things. Zara's eyes took on a distant look. They never expect a baseline human to be willing to sacrifice literally everything for revenge. Kowalski's training told him to report this conversation immediately. His instincts told him to run. His curiosity kept him in his seat. What did you do? I learned. For 3 years in those pits, I learned everything about enhanced physiology, enhanced psychology, enhanced technology. I memorized their weaknesses, their blind spots, their arrogance patterns. And when I finally escaped, she paused, savoring the memory. I became their worst nightmare. A ghost they couldn't track, couldn't predict, couldn't understand. I would appear in their strongholds like smoke, eliminate targets with their own weapons, and vanish before their enhanced senses could even register my presence. How did you get strong enough to challenge them physically? Zara laughed, a sound like breaking promises. Who said I challenged them physically? Sergeant, enhanced humans might be stronger than me, but they still need to breathe. They still need their cybernetic components to function. They still bleed when you cut the right arteries. She stood again, this time moving to examine the medals and commendations on Kowalski's wall. The trick isn't to fight them on their terms. The trick is to make them fight on yours. And what terms are those? Terror, uncertainty, the slow realization that all their enhancements, all their advantages, all their superiority, none of it matters when death comes wearing a baseline human's face. Meanwhile, back in the training facility, the recruits were attempting to continue their exercises, but their hearts weren't in it. Every few minutes, someone would glance toward the door Zara had lifted, as if expecting it to reveal new impossibilities. I ran full-spectrum analysis on her during the lift. Tessa announced to the group, no hidden technology, no genetic modifications, no pharmaceutical enhancement. She's reading as completely baseline human in every way. Then how? Marcus demanded. He'd been asking the same question for 20 minutes now. Elena, who had been quietly researching on her datapad, looked up with troubled eyes. I found something. New Geneva colony. It was listed as destroyed 12 years ago in a classified military report. Status was changed to active 6 months later, with a note about data correction. The group gathered around her pad as she scrolled through restricted files her tactical clearance barely allowed her to access. Look at this, she continued. There are 43 separate incident reports over the past 7 years. Enhanced collective leadership, dying in impossible circumstances. Always alone, always with no witnesses, always with evidence of impossible physical trauma. Jake peered over her shoulder. Impossible how? Crushed skulls with no impact weapons. Torn throats with no cutting tools. Broken spines from attackers who would have had to be 3 times stronger than the victims. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. One report describes a scene where an enhanced super soldier was literally ripped in half. The investigating team couldn't figure out what kind of machinery could have done it. Machinery, Tessa repeated slowly. They assumed it had to be machinery. Marcus was staring at his hands again. She lifted 3,000 pounds like it was nothing. If she can do that, she could rip someone in half, Elena finished. The question is, how is a baseline human doing any of this? Their speculation was interrupted by Zara's return. She entered the training bay alone. Sergeant Kowalski, nowhere to be seen. Her expression was neutral, almost pleasant, as if the previous demonstration had been nothing more than a warm-up routine. Where's the sergeant? Jake asked nervously. Making some calls to Colonial Command. Apparently, there are some discrepancies in the records that need clearing up. Zara's tone suggested this was entirely routine. In the meantime, he asked me to continue with the physical assessments. She walked over to the equipment lineup, examining the remaining challenges with professional interest. Let's see. Strength testing complete. What's next? Endurance? Combat simulation? Team coordination exercises. The recruits exchanged glances. No one wanted to be the first to suggest anything that might trigger another impossible demonstration. Actually, Elena said slowly, I think we're all wondering about something else. You mentioned that baseline human isn't a limitation. It's a warning label. What did you mean by that? Zara smiled, and this time there was something almost fond in her expression. You really want to know? 37 heads nodded in unison. All right then, but you might want to sit down for this. They didn't sit down, but they did unconsciously huddle closer together, like children gathering around a campfire, while wolves howled in the darkness. Enhanced humans, Zara began, are created to be better than baseline humans in specific ways. Stronger, faster, smarter, more resilient. They're designed for superiority. She picked up a small training weight, a mere 50 pounds, and began absently juggling it from hand to hand as she spoke. But here's what the enhancement process can't account for. It makes you predictable. When you're engineered for strength, you solve problems with strength. When you're enhanced for speed, you rely on speed. When your intelligence is artificially boosted, you trust in your ability to outthink your opponents. The weight spun through the air in impossible patterns as she continued. Baseline humans don't have that luxury. We can't depend on being stronger or faster or smarter than our problems. We have to be more creative, more adaptable, more willing to do whatever it takes to survive. She caught the weight and held it steady. And sometimes when a baseline human is pushed far enough, when they're forced to adapt beyond normal limits, something interesting happens. What? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. We stopped being baseline. The weight in her hand began to deform, metal flowing like clay under her grip, not through enhancement, not through technology, through pure, concentrated will, through the absolute refusal to accept limits that others try to impose on us. She opened her hand, revealing that the 50-pound weight had been compressed into a perfect sphere no larger than a marble. The enhanced collective thought they were superior because they had advantages I didn't. They never considered that having those advantages might actually be a disadvantage. They never imagined that someone without enhanced strength might develop something far more dangerous. She flicked the compressed metal marble across the room. It struck a reinforced wall and punched through 3 feet of military-grade armor plating, before embedding itself in the structural beam beyond. They never imagined that someone might develop the strength of absolute necessity. The training bay was silent, except for the sound of settling debris from the wall Zara had just perforated with a casual gesture. Elena was the first to find her voice. What are you? Zara considered the question seriously. I'm what happens when humanity gets pushed beyond its breaking point and decides to push back. I'm what enhanced humans never see coming, because they've forgotten that evolution doesn't stop just because you think you perfected yourself. She looked around to 37 faces staring at her in mixed terror and awe. I'm the warning label that says, danger, contents under pressure. And I'm here at this academy because there are things coming that will make the enhanced collective look like playground bullies. Marcus swallowed hard. What kind of things? Zara's smile returned bright and terrible as a dying star. The kind that are going to learn the same lesson the collective did. That when you threaten humanity, when you push us to our limits, when you make the mistake of thinking we're weak. She walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the devastated training facility. You don't get stronger humans. You get something that used to be human and has decided that your definition of impossible is merely a suggestion. The door slid shut behind her, leaving 37 of the galaxy's most promising recruits to contemplate the terrifying possibility that they had just met the future of human evolution. And that future was apparently very, very angry about something. In his office, Sergeant Kowalski ended his call with Colonial Command and stared at the classified files now displayed on his screen. Files that painted a picture of systematic deception, false records, and a cover-up that reached to the highest levels of military command. Files that confirmed every impossible thing Zara Chen had told him. He reached for his emergency communicator, the one that connected directly to Academy Command, then hesitated. Once he made this call, once he reported what he had learned, there would be no going back. The comfortable illusion that humanity was safe, that the enhanced had been defeated, that the galaxy was at peace, would shatter forever. But the alternative was to let 37 promising young soldiers walk into whatever was coming completely unprepared. He keyed the communicator. Academy Command, this is Kowalski. I need to speak with the director immediately. We have a cold black situation, and I think we're going to need a new definition of human. Outside, in the Academy Gardens, Zara Chen sat on a bench and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there in the darkness between worlds, ancient enemies were stirring. Things that had watched the enhanced collectives rise and fall with amusement, waiting for the right moment to emerge and claim what they considered rightfully theirs. They thought humanity was weak. They thought the galaxy was defenseless. They thought they understood what they were dealing with. Zara's smile could have melted hull plating. They were about to learn that humans had a saying: "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice." Well, there wouldn't be a twice. Not this time.